Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Munsell. This is Communicating Today. We've been on Channel 10 for a long, long time, well over 20 years, well past 600 programs. For those of you who watch us on a regular basis, you know we come on 3 times every week, every Wednesday evening in prime time at 8:30 p.m., every Friday morning for you early birds when you're driving to work in the morning and perhaps you can't see our show, but we hope you're not texting and emailing at the same time. That's kind of dangerous. But every Sunday afternoon at 3:30, when sometimes there are football games being played, and you may or may not see the show either. But we are one of the longest running programs on Channel 10. We've been here for a long, long time, had a lot of terrific shows for you, and I will certainly admit that tonight will be another terrific program. We have sitting alongside of me a very special guest by the name of Dave Ramos, R-A-M-O-S, who has written a terrific book called Decide One Thing. It's a very interesting book, and I read it just in a couple of nights. It was only 170 pages, fairly short, about 12 chapters, but extremely interesting and very, very inspirational and very motivational, I must say. So I guess the best thing for me to do is to introduce my guest. Dave, thank you so much for being on our program.
Thank you, John.
On Communicating Today and being our guest for tonight's program. I want to take 1 second and thank somebody else, one of your associates, a very nice lady by the name of Marcy Peck. Marcy, thank you so much if you're listening or watching out there, because you were so nice to send and exchange a lot of emails with me to help to put this show together for Dave to be on our program. So thank you very much. We hope you enjoy our show. Dave, we're going to be talking about your book, so that the purpose of our program tonight is a book review, which you have written recently, and it's gotten a lot of reviews from what I understand. And again, as I said before, it's called Decide One Thing, and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be putting a copy of the cover of Dave's book up on your TV screen periodically during the course of our 30-minute show, along also with his website down at the bottom of your screen, which is www.shiftpoints.com. That happens to be the name of his company. He's in the consulting business. So I just thought I'd mention that. Dave, they'll see a lot of pictures periodically, probably half a dozen times during the course of the show. But I guess we ought to find out a little bit more about you, Dave. When we were preparing for this show, Marcy informed me that you and I have a lot in common.
Yes, we do.
You and I graduated from the same college, little school, or I say a big school by the name of Drexel University in Philadelphia.
Yes, sir.
I go way back to 1953, I think, and I think you mentioned you came along a few years after that.
83.
83,
Just
so
a few
there's
years.
a couple of years between us, but and I think we both majored in the same course, a Bachelor of Science in Business for me.
Business administration.
Business
I was
administration.
an accounting major.
Accounting major,
Yes.
Okay. And then you went on from there, and you went to work for a very fine company called IBM.
Where you also started your career.
And I started my business career with IBM after I served a couple of years in the United States Army in the Counterintelligence Corps. So we both kind of started with it. And you started with IBM when you were at Drexel.
Yes.
And you were in this wonderful program that our school had and still has called the Cooperative System of Education, where people go to class for a semester, then they go out to work for a semester, and back in class again, then they go out and work and so forth. This way they get practical experience, and you got your practical experience at IBM.
I did. I graduated with 2.5 years experience and a job offer. Nothing
Couldn't
wrong
ask
with
for
that.
more than that. So that when you did finally graduate from Drexel and got your BS degree and majored in accounting, you decided that, hey, and I guess IBM probably came to you at that point because you had been with them for a while during the co-op program and offered you a position, I guess.
Yes.
What happened there?
Well, I started my career in sales in the Philadelphia office, and that was just a fantastic experience. Back then, we went through a whole year of training before we started actually selling for IBM, and I loved being there. It's a great company.
That's terrific. And now I know that when you were at then you after IBM, after you were at IBM for a few years, then you decided to advance your education and you went to Harvard Business School.
Yes.
And got a master's degree there in what?
I got a master's degree in business administration,
Business administration.
MBA, and as I say, I believe in miracles, because not only did I get into the Harvard Business School, but I got out.
Isn't that wonderful? The school of the Kennedys and all those other famous New England families up there that went to school at that school. And if I'm not mistaken, did you not get some kind of an award up there while you were at Harvard or something? I was reading something in your background.
Well, I got a number of awards while I was at IBM and then at Nortel later in my career, but not from Harvard.
I thought something happened at Harvard. Well, my mistake.
No, I just made it through. That's it.
Okay, well, now, so you've had a very interesting business career, and with a couple of different companies. Nortel was another one that you worked for.
Yes.
I guess a technology type company that was involved in something called artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I spent a short period of time at a startup company called AnswerLogic that was in the natural language processing business. I spent 10 years at Nortel Networks. I've had a bunch of different experiences along the way.
Yeah, now when I started at Drexel, going back to our school again, back in 1953 when I graduated, it used to be called Drexel Institute of Technology. And then somewhere along the way, about the time I think that you got there, they changed their name to a university, so now it's called Drexel University. So they changed names there a little bit, but a fantastic school. In fact, we had a former president, Papadakis, on our program many years ago when he first became president of Drexel, appeared on our Communicating Today show. So now you wrote this book. Is this something, kind of a new venture for you? Is this your first effort at writing some kind of a book?
It is, and I've since launched a second book called Shift Points, and I'm working on my third one called Drive One Direction, and that comes out next year.
Did you ever have an underlying desire to become an author, to become a writer somewhere along the way, and then all of a sudden it came to fruition when you came out with this book?
Well, I was an accounting major, so we didn't do a whole lot of writing. But when I started my consulting company, I got some great advice by a gentleman by the name of Ken Thornton, a retired IBM executive, and he sat me down and he said, Dave, you need to develop a methodology and you need to write a book. And so that's what we've done. We spent about 5 years developing the methodology, and then that led to the book and the process of writing that in a way that was clear and interesting for people to read.
In the meantime, after you worked for some of these outstanding companies at Nortel and IBM and so forth, you decided to start your own consulting business.
Yes.
Which has a name, and it's called?
The name of the company is called Shift Points.
Shift Points, Inc., I guess.
Yes.
And you're basically in the consulting business.
Yes.
And basically, your main objective and your main goal in this consulting business is to do what for the companies that you consult for?
Well, we start by helping them create what we call a differentiating competitive advantage. You know, every company is in an industry that's brutally competitive. And so you have to figure out how you're going to differentiate yourself, and that's the first part of the process, and we call that decide one thing.
So the consulting business resulted in the book, Decide One Thing, which, as you said before, is to narrow the field down to one important thing as to what the company thinks that you're consulting with, that you're doing business with, what you think your main focus is, what it should be or what it could be, and then zero in on that one thing and kind of leave all the other stuff kind of off to the side a bit.
That's right. So we try to get our clients to be intensely focused. What we say is that it's better to dominate one market than dabble in a dozen of them. So that's the part of the process, is narrowing your scope, and the idea is you got to be good at lots of things, but great at one thing, and that's how you win.
Now, in your book, which I just finished reading, Dave, and it was a very, very wonderful book. Ladies and gentlemen, I read this book in 2 quick nights, just a few hours, 170 pages, about a dozen chapters, and it moves very quickly. Extremely well written, David. I must commend you on it, and I would urge folks out there, if you want to see and read a terrific book and really get a tremendous amount of information out of it, and a relatively medium-sized book, this is the book to read, Decide One Thing. I highly recommend it. Now, in the book, Dave, as I read through there, you mentioned that different companies are represented by different things. For example, in your book, you mentioned that the company, this gigantic retail store, the chain of stores, Walmart, has kind of narrowed their focus down to what they want to be, and in their particular situation, they want to be one thing, and let all the other stuff kind of go by the side. And what was that one thing?
Sure, that's price. Walmart's strategy is to win on low prices.
Right.
And that their target market is very clear. It's the family that lives paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
That's very clear. And they've optimized everything in their business around becoming the low-cost supplier.
So they decided on that one thing, which is the title of your book, another great department store chain called Nordstrom's.
Right. By contrast, Nordstrom chose customer service. They have amazing service there, and that's the way that they differentiate themselves from all the other competitive retail stores.
Right. A company that we're all familiar with, it's on the top of the stock market list, on everybody's list, and that's the Apple computer.
Apple chose product design as their one thing. That was part of Steve Jobs' philosophy from the very beginning, trying to drive innovation around the way that people interacted with their computer. And they've been at the forefront of that since the beginning, and it's the thing that gives them a competitive advantage.
So they zeroed in on one thing, which is the keynote of what your book is all about and what your consulting business is all about.
That's right. And they zeroed in on it, and they became great at it.
Absolutely. And then another company, Lexus, that wonderful car that is out there. You see the ads on TV all the time.
Sure. Lexus is about quality. They called it the relentless pursuit of perfection. And they've done a great job of carving for themselves a niche in that high-end automotive business by differentiating their cars on the highest quality, as opposed to BMW, which might be on performance, or Jaguar on design, or Mercedes on engineering.
A fast food company, not a McDonald's. In this case, this was a Wendy's that came up with one particular theme. And I guess everybody knows that when we go to a Wendy's and get a hamburger, it's not the usual what?
It's not the round hamburger,
Not the round
it's
hamburger.
square,
It's a
because
square
as
hamburger.
Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, said, our hamburgers are square because we don't cut corners. But at Wendy's, it's all about product freshness. For example, in other restaurants, the lettuce shows up kind of pre-sliced in a bag. At Wendy's, it shows up as a head of lettuce. And the workers there chop the lettuce fresh every morning. And that's how they differentiate themselves.
Fresh from the farm and square, not round, which is what all the other people are doing, the round hamburgers, which we're so familiar with.
Right.
Now, here's another one. I think, David, you and I talked about this before the program, one that is kind of near and dear to your heart, I believe, a company called BTI 360. First of all, what does all that mean, BTI 360? Does that have a special meaning?
Well, BTI 360 is a government contractor here in town. When I started working with them, they were a small company, about 12 people, and there were over 300 other competitors that were on that same contract as them. And the founders, MJ Wyvil and Jeremy Nims, really were struggling to differentiate themselves from those 300 competitors. And they went through this process with us, and they've done a fantastic job. In their case, their one thing is called developing ultimate teammates. They chose the way they're going to differentiate their firm is to put their people first. And they've optimized everything in the business, from the way they do recruiting to the way they deliver a job offer, which is very interesting, to all the other investments around developing people to their fullest. And that's how they've differentiated themselves, and they've done a fantastic job since then.
BTI 360, and that reminds me, David, I just got the half point warning in our program, which means I have to leave you for a second, go back to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Communicating Today. I'm John Munsell, been on Channel 10 for a long, long time, over 20 years, way past 300 shows, or 600 shows, I'm sorry. I cut that in half, but 600 programs. I have a very special program that we're doing for you tonight. And for those of you who watch us on a regular basis, by the way, you know we do come on 3 times every week, every Wednesday evening in prime time at 8:30 p.m., every Friday morning for the early birds, Sunday afternoons at 3:30, so 3 times, one of the longest running shows here on Channel 10, Fairfax Cable TV. And we have a very special guest for us tonight, this gentleman sitting alongside of me here, who happens to have a lot in common with me. We graduated from the same college, Drexel University in Philadelphia, Dave. Worked for IBM, a wonderful company, for a period of time. So, and as a matter of fact, Dave, I forgot to mention, I found out, and as you informed me before the show, I live in Great Falls, Virginia, and I found out you're a neighbor of mine in Great Falls, Virginia. So we have 3 things in common.
It's great.
So how do you like that?
See you at the Safeway.
And right, and we're talking about your terrific book. Again, the title, Decide One Thing. And ladies and gentlemen, we're putting a copy of the picture of the cover of Dave Ramos's book up on the screen, and periodically during the course of our program, along with his website down at the bottom of your screen.